British restrictions on manufacture and sale. The British restrictions on the manufacture of certain items in the colonies, such as ironworks, woolen goods, felts, and other luxury items, caused resentment among the Americans. So the colonies, the American colonies, they were restricted from manufacturing certain items, some luxury items like ironworks, woolen goods, and felts. Now, felt is a material, a soft and thick cloth material. So these colonies, they were restricted from manufacturing these items, these items and some other luxury materials. So this restriction means limitation. So this restriction made the Americans angry. Resentment means angry. The law provided that these goods must be imported from Britain. So these items, these materials, luxury items, they could not be produced. They were not allowed to be produced in America, but they had to be imported from Britain. Goods imported from other countries were heavily taxed, and when these goods, when they were imported from other countries, they were taxed heavily. Heavy taxes had to be paid in importing these materials. So when people had to buy these materials, they had to pay huge amount of money. Similarly, the colonists had to export products like cotton, sugar, and tobacco only to England at prices fixed by the British government. And some products which were manufactured, which were produced in the colonies, such as cotton, sugar, and tobacco, these products, they could be exported only to England, and the prices was fixed by the British government. These restrictions convinced the colonists that the British government was deliberately hampering their economic development. So the Americans, they believed that through these restrictions, through the restrictions put forward by Britain, it was trying to purposefully hamper the economic development of America. Hamper means, the word hamper means to delay or to obstruct. So Americans, they believed that Britain was trying to delay or to prevent the economic development of America. Unpopular acts. The war with France left a heavy financial burden on the British. Now the war, the 7-year war between England and France, it led to a huge amount of money burden on Britain. Huge amount of money was spent on these wars. Since the American colonies were the main beneficiaries of Britain's victories in the conflict, Britain considered it appropriate to tax the Americans to manage its war efforts. Americans were the ones who benefited the most from this 7 years war, because the French danger was removed. And because of this, Britain decided to tax these Americans in order to meet the huge war expenses. For this purpose, the British Parliament passed a number of acts. So in order to tax the Americans, many acts were passed by the British Parliament. Now we'll see these acts one by one. The Quartering Act 1765 obliged the colonies to pay a small portion of expenditure incurred upon the maintenance of British troops deployed in America. So according to this act, according to the Quartering Act, the colonies, they had to pay some amount in order to maintain the British troops, in order to maintain the British army which was arranged in America. Now, deploy means, it means arranging for any military action. Now the next one is the Currency Act, sought to ban the prevalent bills of exchange and paper currency of the American colonies, so that only the English currency could be used for business transactions. According to the Currency Act, the American currency as well as the bills of exchange, these were banned. The word ban means they were prohibited from being used. So these things, bills of exchange and American currency, they were banned from being used. Bills of exchange, it means it is a bill where a person A asks another person to pay a certain amount of money to him. So these things, the bills of exchange and paper currencies of American colonies, they were banned because if these currencies were banned, the Americans, they'll use the English currency, that is the British currency, in order to make any transactions. So in order to make these Americans use the British currency, the American currencies were banned. The Sugar Act 1764 banned the import of rum from overseas countries except England. So according to this act, according to the Sugar Act, rum was supposed to be imported only from England. Rum, it is a alcohol. The custom officials were ordered to enforce the Sugar Act strictly, and these custom officers, they were asked to follow. Enforce means to impose or to follow the Sugar Act strictly. The Stamp Act 1765 imposed a tax on legal documents and certain other items such as newspapers. According to the Stamp Act, a tax had to be paid for all legal documents and also for items such as newspapers. And even when any property was purchased, they had to pay the stamp tax. The colonies responded by claiming that they alone had the right to tax themselves through their assemblies and that they were not represented in the British Parliament. Now the colonies, the Americans, they claimed that only they had the right to tax themselves, and the British, they did not have any right to tax these colonies because these Americans, they were not represented in the British Parliament. They had no representation in the British Parliament. They raised the slogan, "No taxation without representation." So they raised a slogan where they demanded that no tax would be paid if they were not allowed to be represented in the British Parliament. The colonists, led by groups known as the Sons of Liberty, drew up a memorandum of protest against the Crown. So the colonies, the Americans, they formed groups known as the Sons of Liberty, and these Sons of Liberty, they issued a memorandum. Memorandum is a written message. They issued a memorandum where they protested against the British Crown. Responding to the protest, the British Parliament withdrew the Stamp Act but claimed the power to legislate for the colonies through the Declaratory Act. Now, in response to this memorandum, put forward by the Sons of Liberty, the Stamp Act was withdrawn by the British Parliament. The Stamp Act was withdrawn, but instead they issued another act, that is a Declaratory Act. Now, according to this act, they claimed the power to legislate for the colonies. That is, according to the Declaratory Act, British, they demanded the power to make laws for the colonies. By the Declaratory Act, the British Parliament got the right to levy both the internal and external taxes. And according to this act, according to the Declaratory Act, the British Parliament, they had the right to collect both internal and external taxes. So these are the causes that led to the outbreak of the American Revolution. The first one was views expressed by philosophers. Then we learnt about the mercantilist policy which was followed by British, the removal of French danger, the attitude which was followed by the British restrictions on manufacture and sale, and also the unpopular acts which were issued by the British Parliament. So that's all for today, girls. Thank you.